Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. This is episode 216, and we're talking about coffee roast development levels. It's very common for us to hear homebrewers talk about that they prefer a specific roast development level, which makes sense. However, with the quickly evolving coffee roasting styles that we see, it's becoming harder and harder to define these development levels, let alone how do you explain a coffee's development level outside of the common light, medium, and dark roast, which each have a spectrum and range to their own, and sometimes they don't do the descriptor justice. In this episode, we answer all those questions and more. Let's get into this. Welcome to another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. My name is Mark Kotrovsky. I'm here with Sergey Kotrovsky, two brothers, co-owners of Mirror Coffee Roasters up here in Bellingham, Washington. We've been doing this podcast for a few years now, way past 200 episodes. And every single episode, we start out by drinking some batchy, as we like to call it, some batch brew. So that's what we're going to do. So let's pour some drip. It's very nice. I can get behind this. I brewed this a while ago. It's for it to cool down a little bit.
Yeah, temperature is nice. I don't love this. I'll be honest.
Dang. Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Like, tastes like a solid guat to me.
That's great.
Like I said, I'm not.
Sergio will be stunned.
I'm definitely
when
not.
I give him the reveal.
I'm definitely not saying.
Away.
Well,
folks,
no.
we have it on record. He said it was a solid goal.
Dude,
this is crazy.
I'm not saying that this is
Friends,
not.
This is why you should. This is actually a great segue.
We're not done yet.
Into the pod. Is you have to be like if you want to evaluate coffees for what they are, just taste them blind, please. I beg you. Just taste them blind.
I agree.
And even better if you could be like away and not know anything about the blind tasting. It's already good enough for you to kind of, whether you do a cupping or you pour a bunch of filters or some batch brews or whatever way, like it's great. Even then, if you like move some cups around and you write it at the bottom, this is great. But if you could have somebody just like surprise you and just give you something and you're mixing it up, this is great. So this is what this is right now.
Yeah. I mean, all I'm saying is like, is this a good coffee? Yeah, absolutely. It's a great coffee. Do I love this coffee? We've had some like freaking ragers on the podcast, like crazy good batch brews.
So nice.
And like out of the stuff that we've been drinking recently on the podcast, this is like a solid 6 or 7 out of 10.
Wow. Okay, folks. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm biased.
It's nice.
I'm really enjoying this. It's a little subdued. Little subdued. It feels a little suppressed.
Okay, can I say why?
Because I had it on. I brewed it this morning actually on filter,
nice.
On pour over. It was tasting much better. Actually, I was stunned this morning.
Yeah. Can I tell you why I'm not loving it? Maybe it's my brain is like, again, the bias. I've been also brewing a lot of coffees at home. Obviously, like majority of my coffee brewing is now at home, and maybe again, this is so much bias. I'm glad you bring up bias, but I might be a little more biased because I'm starting to listen to more Lance than I ever have. I've caught up on majority of his videos. I listen to a few a day. And maybe what's stuck in my head is like I started brewing more V60 again. And the crispiness of a V60, not only the crispiness, like it's like the lightness, the airiness, like with punch and the clarity that you get.
Yeah. The V60 will do that.
Yeah.
But folks, there it is. A nice little blind tasting, because those are good and they let you unbiased evaluate a coffee. And this whole conversation was spurred out of, the whole talk about light roasted coffees, ultra light roasted coffees, and that's been just a common theme, I think, amongst, maybe it's just like we're in an echo chamber of people talking about development coffees and things going much lighter. And, nowadays people calling like Onyx coal, or, like some people were saying, yeah, just on the Reddit thread, it's interesting because like light roasted coffees, like the roasters that you think were light roast for a long time now are like called like, oh, this is like coal, as they say, or medium, or anyways. So where this conversation, that was what that inspired. That was what inspired this episode. And so I've just been thinking about, and we've been talking a lot about even our roasting style that has shifted, for the sake of this conversation, much lighter, much crispier, much more airy, a little more acidity and punch forward and zippy than sweet and round and with thicker body and syrupy. And what I've just realized is it's very interesting that it's kind of hard to define development. Yeah. And I see this thing always being thrown around, oh, that's overdeveloped, or oh, that's underdeveloped, or oh, like they're roasting too dark, it's too cold, or oh, this is ultralight. And it's really hard to define, really hard. And we'll talk later about like how to measure that technically. But yeah, because there's some, yeah, I'll leave that on for a little later. But anyways, Serge, any thoughts as we kick this off? Well, what's coming to mind first?
I gotta say, I do really like the change in language, or where the language has evolved or into, because going back to like original like color language back in the day, like SCA classes, when I did all the SCA schooling, academy training, all of that stuff, the whole city plus city, full city, minor city, big city, skyscrapers, like I don't even remember right now. I don't know if you do, like what all that means and what color correlates to what city. Like, are you talking about New York? Are you talking about LA? Like, well, how big is the city? And that language never hit home with me. So then it comes down to like, light, medium, dark. And that language in itself is fairly abstract.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because, we've been running Mira for a few years, and you and I at home, when we're talking about color, we talk about, is that like more developed, less developed? Where is the development on the flavor? Not like, and again, when we're referring, we'll talk about this, but when we're referring to development, we're not simply talking about development time ratio or percentage of, all that. We're not talking about that. But that language, the kind of development slider spectrum, is more relatable to me now than any other definition or defining language vocabulary around color, if that makes sense.
Hey, sorry to interrupt the podcast. This is just a quick announcement. Next Friday, November 14th, I'll be in San Francisco taking over Golden Goat Coffee's coffee bar. We'll be there with their crew making tasty coffees for you. So if you're in the area, please swing by. I'd love to meet you and make you a delicious cup of coffee. Now back to the episode. Repeat that last part. What's the most defining language?
Just the idea or the verbiage around that is more or less developed. Like, oh, that's slightly overdeveloped, or that's slightly underdeveloped.
But there's got to be...
There has to be a reference.
Yeah, there has to be a reference point.
Yeah.
And I think for many coffee drinkers, that reference point is a moving target. Like everybody has their different reference points. And that's why some people can say a coffee is very well developed, and that very well developed for somebody is like an underdeveloped, and for some people that's an overdeveloped.
Yeah.
And so something I've realized interesting is watching and hearing the coffees that people drink and raving about their development style, that it's pretty light, much lighter than your classic typical American roaster. Mm-hmm. And then me purchasing those coffees, tasting them for sure, mm-hmm. because I'm curious. And they're tasting like okay and kind of actually a little roasty.
Your definition of roasty has evolved. Right. So,
and a little over than what I like, pushed. Yeah. And then when I throw them on the reader, the color reader that we have, mm-hmm. Realizing that their color is a few points darker than what I would appreciate.
Yeah.
And being like, why are these people that drink really great coffees, they have a palate, they're skilled in just brewing coffee at home, why are they saying that that's like a very nice light roast coffee, when I'm like, yeah. I would consider that a little more developed than I'm comfortable with.
Yeah.
Even though my scale, though, is also way more developed than some people. It's like some people, especially those drinking ultra light roast, like for them, the coffees that I think that I enjoy would probably be like, bro, you're still a boomer.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm still a little more old school than they are.
Yeah.
But some of those folks are talking about coffees that, you know, are reading darker and stuff that I'm not enjoying. Which, all that to say, like, if you're just confused right now, I'm confused as well. That's the point of this whole conversation, is that I'm confused, and I'm starting to realize that a lot of people are lost about what they perceive as where development sits on certain coffees. And it's actually turned into, I think, more, it's just tough to define. Mm-hmm. And it's turned into more as a scale, which is what you actually, now that I'm thinking about it, which is what you just mentioned, of having a reference point saying, oh, is it darker than that or is it lighter than that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And would you consider that an ultralight or slightly darker or somewhere in the middle or Nordic or whatever it is?
Yeah.
And we actually start to communicate, I think, in terms of reference points of different roasters, mm-hmm. which also gets a little hairy because not all roasters develop all the coffees the same. Like some of our coffees, I mean, most of our coffees fall within maybe like a 3-4 point window on the Agtron, that is. And in some coffees, like our guats that are about to land, are reading a little ways darker, because they're kind of meant for milk-based drinks, espresso, batching, stuff like that. So you can't necessarily compare, for example, like, oh, they're like lighter than Mir. Well, is it
which Mir?
Mir's the guats or their filter roast, or which one is it? You know?
Yeah.
And so I guess to start off with is like, I want to mention, like, having a color reader is a very good measure of development.
Yeah.
I think you would agree that color is one of the most defining factors of flavor when you're roasting.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
I think most roasters would agree with that.
Yeah.
Is that if you hit a specific color, you're probably like, of that coffee, color fluctuation a few points darker or lighter is going to influence taste probably the most.
Yeah.
Out of all your variables. And color is a big deal. So when you're able to read color on a color reader, that's a very good standard for QC, which is kind of what we do, and a very good reference point for, is it more or less?
Yeah. And you're speaking about all of this with that statement from a roaster's perspective.
Yes.
Because you're not talking about the perspective of a home barista or a coffee consumer at home, like coffee drinker at home. Yes. I don't think there's a lot of coffee drinkers or home baristas that own color readers and that build spreadsheets. I think that home baristas should start getting color readers and keeping spreadsheets. I think that would be wonderful. If there were like 100 home baristas who would buy our coffee regularly and actually put our coffees into a spreadsheet, into a reader, I would be eternally grateful. Thanks. Share that data with me. We want more data. Please do that.
I will say this because you mentioned the spreadsheet. We actually have a spreadsheet, folks, that we've been working on. Because
for 2 years?
No, maybe for like the last, strictly for like the last 9-10 months or so, where we have color reading data of different roasters that we try, which data of probably roasters you've been drinking with the color reading numbers values for each coffee. So you can actually see kind of where our coffees lie, where other people's coffees lie in reference to each other.
Yeah.
And that's I think a very great way of communicating. Mm-hmm. If you can say, oh, here's this number for this roaster, and I like this roaster, and I like coffees around this number, well, then you can just go to another coffee on the spreadsheet and find that. And so we'll actually probably drop the link to the spreadsheet in the description, so you can just click on it and take a view. It's on the Google sheet. Mm-hmm. But back to your comment, why, if all the home baristas or all the coffee drinkers had a color reader, why are color readers also terrible? Why are color readings not like, if somebody's like, oh, you can just put Actron numbers on your website, why does that not work?
Yeah, I mean, first off, if you have no other data points to relate it to, it doesn't mean anything. Just a number doesn't really mean anything unless you know what that number equates to in flavor. Right. So I think if someone was to build out, like a home enthusiast or a home barista was to build out a color reading scale, then they also need to dial in that color reader according to how they're generally brewing coffee and what it tastes like. Because with that said, not all color development is equal. Not all developed coffees to a certain number are developed the same way. There's multiple ways to achieve a certain color reading. Whether, once again, like if you roast to the classic declining ROR method, or you can achieve a color reading by not doing a declining ROR. So color reader is the primary, color in general is the primary source of defining flavor, but to achieve that color also impacts how you experience that flavor. In the same way, not all coffees brewed on a V60 at a 3-minute extraction taste juicy, right? There's other variables that go in there, whether that's like different varietal, different type of coffee, there's just a lot of variables. So you can't define it. Is it good to know, like, hey, if you have this recipe and you hit this time, you might get a pretty good brew, probably will. Yeah. Will it be perfect? No. And so I think sometimes when you overly rely, like for a while, people used to dial in coffees just based on TDS and extraction percentage. That's not always accurate. I mean, you hear about people enjoying coffees and say the best tasting brews are at now 18% extraction, when it used to be like, man, no bypass brewer, 23% extraction. Wow, incredible. Let's drink that. And now people are not agreeing with that. Yeah. So if you solely rely on color numbers without giving those numbers meaning, they don't mean anything.
Right. And on top of that is that those, like, there are nowadays, there's been a huge increase in different color readers. So you have like light tells, you have the digitize, the digifluid or difluid. You have the LeBrew Roast C, which is what we use. We have the official Agtron reader.
It's like 20 grand?
Yeah, something crazy. Like, so there are multiple readers and they're all actually going to read differently.
Yeah.
Like, even their colors between themselves can deviate. So, number one, depending on your color reader, that's going to change your number. Yeah. So somebody can have 100 and that could mean 95 on a Roast C LeBrew, 105 on the Digifluid, 102 on Light Tells, on Actron, Espresso. That's one. Number two, well, your grinder and your particle distribution. Your grind size changes your color reading value. So if you go finer, I think if you go finer, I think the number reads lighter. If you go coarser, I think it reads darker, or the other way around, one of them. Yeah. That's not everybody's going to have an EK.
Exactly.
That all of a sudden becomes an issue. And then number 3 is why am I blanking on this? But I just blanked. But anyways, even just from those two, you have variables that end up making this, like, me putting a number Actron on my product page does not mean anything to you. However, that's why we started the sheet, the Google Drive sheet, is because that gives us a reference point. So when I'm like, oh, are we darker than this, or are we lighter than this, and where do we compare with others, and that all of a sudden starts giving a much better reference point for different roasters and their developments when you have a comparison. So just the number alone is like great. Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought up that some stuff that you just mentioned is that not like, yes, color is one of the biggest leading variables in taste, but there are other things that can impact taste that may make a coffee taste darker or lighter.
Right.
So, so it's not just this color, it's going to taste like this. Yeah. Different roasters, different machines, different ways of developing coffees, that shifts things. So.
Yeah. And I used to, and again, I might be throwing myself under the bus when I say this. I used to also say, oh, any machine, it doesn't matter what roaster it was roasted on, it's going to taste identical. And I still believe believe that you can achieve light roast with almost any machine. Yeah. You can. But you and I have, similarly with how processing, we're like, ooh, that tastes like Diego processed it, right? We have now developed a taste kind of correlation to certain machines. And we can say that kind of tastes like it was roasted on a Loring, right? So there is going to be like
which does get proved wrong sometimes.
Yeah. So, I'm not saying it's absolute data. And the same thing, like, I'm not saying like, oh, that coffee was ground on with these burrs. Absolutely. But I can be like, ooh, these taste like the old EK burrs, right? Yeah. There is that, you kind of gather that information. And the reason I bring that up is, again, like, there are variables that outside of color that still impact the dynamic flavor of the cup. Like, the cup can hit all the flavor notes, can have all that, but there can be a tinge in how you develop that coffee that will actually be different. And I think that's where, again, just having the number on a bag, or just having flavor notes even on the bag, doesn't technically define the specific way that coffee was developed, and the specific roast approach that roaster had to develop that coffee. There's just, and I think that's why we love drinking. That's why, I mean, I don't want to keep talking, but this excites me, because that's why we love buying coffees from this roaster, that roaster. Like, we can look at the same producer, same varietal, same processing, but buy it from multiple roasters and enjoy them, because there is that creativity in the roast that we love. That's why we drink these coffees.
Yeah. I think the other thing that we didn't touch upon too much on is weight loss. Weight loss is a pretty big, for us, QC marker for development. So the more weight loss you have, the more developed your coffees get, the more weight it's losing in the roast process. And you can, if you have less weight loss, you're kind of leaning towards a lesser developed coffee. If you have more weight loss, you're leading to a more developed coffee. But even then, the problem you run into there is, like, if you say, hey, I had 12% weight loss. Well, is that 12% on a coffee that has 14% moisture content?
Yes.
Or 10% moisture content? Exactly. Or 12, or 13, or 11. All of a sudden, that could mean something to us, for those who know the coffee, who are trying to make sure our roasts are all consistent and dialed in. But how we communicate that, well, so what if I said there's 12% moisture loss?
Yeah.
or sorry, 12% weight loss. So just this whole conversation is like, I don't think that we've figured out as a coffee industry how to communicate things that are like even across the board.
Yeah.
Other than, I think, just saying, oh, this tastes lighter than this.
Yeah.
Or this tastes darker than this.
Yeah.
Like, it's all really reference.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of people say, oh, just post like Agtron. Like I said, like those numbers actually do not, they do not hold much value.
Yeah.
If they're not within a database, like for example, Lance's color database, or our short, small little spreadsheet, which you can view down like we mentioned, but it's really hard.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's like easy to just say, oh yeah, this is more developed or less developed. And sometimes actually, I think that's
such a curveball, but go ahead.
Yeah, taste, I think it plays a big role as well. It's just being able to gauge it via taste outside of readers.
I mean, your
and stuff
palate,
like
I was
that.
going to say, before I mentioned the curveball, I was going to say, like, your palate is fairly dialed, as it should be. You cup more coffees than I do. Like, I especially in the recent, like, few months, I've been cupping way more than I normally do. And I've been brewing at home way more than I used to. But your palate has developed to the point where I've seen you, even I have written proof and text messages where you would call out a roast 1 point off. And that the reason I bring this up is because, yeah, if you're just taking readings, but you're actually not affiliating those readings to your brew method or your cupping, then again, why are you taking these readings? They don't really matter. Or if you're looking and referring, maybe it's just a quick kind of safety measure where you're like, okay, like I like these coffees. That reading is helpful in relation to these coffees. The curveball I was going to say, so with the evolution of tech in general, we're seeing like, AI collecting a lot of data. If us dropping this spreadsheet, other people dropping spreadsheets, do you think there's a time 10 years down the road where you can just ask, 10 is a lot. Maybe I should even say less. I was saying 10 in reference of where Mirror is. Like we're at our 6-year mark, 10, maybe 4 years at our 10-year mark, let's say, where maybe there's people who have had our coffee from day one to that 10-year mark. They have a flavor development of their palate has developed with our roasting approach. Their palate has grown. All of that considered. Do you think there would be a time where you just ask chat or whoever, you ask, hey, I want a coffee from Mir at this number with this % weight loss, and it just orders that coffee for you?
I mean, you could just do that now. Like we could just put a number on an Agtron number, and those who know the sheet, which you can just view it now, can just match and compare. Say, oh, I like their Miller Nanez, or I like their Sebastian Ramirez that was at this color, and then go compare it to what's on a product page. It's been an interesting last couple, like year and a half, 2 years of really keeping track and noticing, like, literally we're cupping coffees and I'm measuring every single reading and correlating, trying to train myself, my brain and my palate to say, this is what a 106 tastes like, Agtron. This is what this. And literally just comparing that also to curves and to roast times and to roast development and weight loss and all that jazz. And it's been interesting. And it's made actually, on the flip side, enjoying coffee is even more challenging, because now you just taste stuff that you don't want to taste. So
I gotta say it. 6-7 # we're locked in.
We're locked in. Chat. There you have it, folks. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. As we always say, remember, reflect what's good.